Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today's topic are all possible missing legendary characters for the Warriors of Chaos, specifically those of Tzeentch. So without further ado, let's begin. The Warriors of Tzeentch are often both capable warriors and master wizards, making them incredibly dangerous opponents. The reputation of the Northern Warriors of Tzeentch for meticulously prosecuting the strategy of war is rightly legendary, and it has thus often appeared that almost every eventuality in battle has been planned out for in advance. The followers of Tzeentch are often capable warriors in their own right, but it is in their capacity for maleficent spellcraft and masterful manipulation that they truly excel. The greatest amongst their number are amongst the most mutated of all the followers of Chaos, armed with devastatingly powerful magical weaponry and mighty armor, etched endlessly with runes of protection and aid, and are amongst the most terrifying of the servants of Chaos. Before we start looking towards the possible characters, it is important to note the following. The first few characters in this video are considered more minor, barely having any lore, no official model or any rules, and later on in the video we'll be discussing more well-known characters, and any possible mechanics that might be translated from the tabletop to Total War Warhammer. And lastly, any character that had no official model will be represented by either a generic model or generic artwork. First up, we have Lord Zorgazar. For a time, he was one of the mightiest of all mortal magic users. His thirst for more and more knowledge led him across the globe in search of arcane lore. He would join any war host if it brought him closer to a source of raw power or a lost mystical tome. Using heinous magics, he sought to make himself invincible, for he knew his quest for mystical lore would eventually prove deadly. When the Chaos Sorcerer first died, his fallen body was immediately absorbed into the ground. With a tremulous shudder, the surface cracked, and a stone monolith pushed its way upwards, a massive monument to the fallen sorcerer. Though the monolith barely contained any magical power, as the great sorcerer lived once again, reborn anew in the realms of chaos, Lord Zorgazar returned to his quest, vowing to one day return to the sites of his death to have his revenge. And so centuries passed, with new monuments rising wherever the powerful mage fell in battle, but as always, the sorceress lord always returned. He has not been sighted as of late. Many suspect he has finally met true death, while others believe he is simply buying his time. Next we have Erda, an old Aisling witch. This old woman is described as having a head of stringy white hair, and a face withered by age and the elements. At the center of her forehead, the skin is puckered and scarred grey with dead flesh. Into the wound had been placed or grown a large black stone, and into this stone had been carved an eye-like symbol, one of the many signs that Tzeentch is known by. Yet this stone shifts, as though it were an actual third eye. Her voice is thin and raspy, her mouth barely has any teeth left. Yet in combat she can move faster than even a berserker, able to cast spells that render such men powerless to fight her. Next we have Elfric of the Iron Wolves. Depicted as a broad-shouldered giant with a horned helm and a visor carved in the shape of a wolf, Elfric is no sorcerer, but he is still devoted to Tzeentch. Beneath his fur cloak, he wears iridescent plate of heavy steel armor that ripples and throws back the light as though a sheen of oil slithered across its surface. Edged with fluted spirals of gold and silver, the breastplate was molded to resemble powerful pectoral and abdominal muscles. The flesh of Elfric's arms is all but obscured by the many beaten iron trophy rings and painted tattoos. By the year 2522 of the Imperial calendar, Elfric had amassed an army of nearly 40,000 warriors under his banner, with more arriving by the day. Men and monsters alike who worship the ruinous powers flock to him, eager to share in his success. With an army of 40,000 warriors comprised of hounds, trolls, warriors of chaos, and even a dragon ogre, he made way for Kislev, eager to corrupt it in the name of the dark gods. Next we have Addict Demonclaw, a former imperial noble who became disillusioned with the empire and slowly turned to the worship of chaos, seeking out various forbidden tomes and gaining knowledge by infiltrating cults dedicated to Tzeentch. After journeying to the Chaos Wastes, he finally pledged himself to Tzeentch, and over the next century was granted many gifts for his dedication to the Changer of Ways. He rose to power within the Chaos Wastes and eventually gathered an army of hundreds of thousands of warriors, marching his legions through Kislev. He and his warriors poured through the frozen lands of Kislev, but eventually his army broke as he was slain by Gotrek Gunnarsson himself. But now we can look towards characters that had unique models, with some of them even having their own special rules. Firstly, we'll look at two characters at the same time, as they are a father and son duo. Melek the Changer and his son Sisbeth. Melek was a humble Norscan blacksmith, whose path to damnation was set upon him when the village shaman lost control of a spell intended to help his wife give birth safely. This instead killed the woman and horribly mutated the baby, where he was born with the head of a bird. The boy was deemed a good omen by the village chieftain, who proclaimed him a sign of favor from their demonic patron, Zarekor. The village celebrated the baby's birth when the chieftain announced that Zarekor had spoken to him directly, decreeing that the village was to hold a tourney. The mightiest warrior of the village was to become the new apprentice to the village shaman. Melek won the tourney, and his first task as the apprentice was to find the true name of their demonic patron. Unable or unwilling to back down, Melek left for the Chaos Wastes, eventually finding a portal into the realms of chaos itself. There, he was beset by demons of Tzeentch, but by mastering his fear, he forced them to submit to his will, enslaving an army of gibbering horrors, flickering flamers, and rapacious screamers to protect him as he sought out Serigor, the Lord of Change. Riding atop a burning disc of Tzeentch, forged from the ether by his own will, Melek quested on, destroying demons of all four Chaos gods as he sought out his demonic patron. When the Lord of Change finally stepped forth, he scattered Melek's army with a gesture. When Melek demanded Zarekor reveal his true name, the greater demon struck him down with blasts of spell flame. Even as he lay dying, the apprentice continued his questioning, and for a moment Zarekor allowed the question to fill his mind. His thoughts becoming corporal around him, Melek's horrors chanted the name in chorus, and with his last breath, Melek spoke the demon's name. This bound the demon to his soul, healing his wounds and bestowing him with the demon's arcane knowledge and power. Gifting his new master with an enchanted blade, Zarekor opened a portal and sent Melek and his demonic minions back to the real world. There he found 20 years had passed, and his army of demons were forced to do battle against his former tribe. The battle was fought long and hard, but the Aeslings managed to fight back the demons with relative ease, as the shaman empowered their warriors to be able to fight against these demonic creatures. At the height of the battle, Sisbeth the mutant, who was being taught by the tribal shaman while his father was away on his journeys, murdered his teacher and secured victory for his father. After 20 years, father and son had finally been reunited, both of them eventually serving under Archaon the Ever-Chosen as two of his most powerful lieutenants. Next we have Aekold Hellbrass. He bears a most unusual gift, the gift that is known as the Breath of Life. Where Aekold walks, the grass springs green and meadow flowers blossom. When he walks upon the desert sands and stony rocks, the lands burst into life as he passes. Any living thing he touches springs into new and vigorous growth. The long dead wood of doors and staves take root upon his touch. He can even restore the health of creatures that are upon the threshold of death. For such is the power of the Breath of Life. His touch is as indiscriminate as it is potent. While life-giving is the gift of Aekold, he slays his opponents without pity or care for their life. For he knows all life is but an endless dance of change dictated by Tzeentch, the master of fate. On the tabletop, Aekold was a pretty decent character, to be honest, having quite decent stats including very high weapon skill and initiative values. But what really made Aekold quite unique was the access of two magical items. First is the Breath of Life, which goes as follows. At the start of each Chaos turn, Aekold will recover a single wound on a d6 roll of a 4+. He can only recover one wound per turn and can recover his full number of wounds in a time. In addition, any model in base contact with him, friend or foe, will recover a single wound on a d6 roll of a 6. The Breath of Life can bring Aekold back to life, but it cannot restore any other dead models. Once slain, he can still recover wounds, and thereby reincarnate himself, but a d6 score of a 5+ is required to return his first wound. So how could this be translated into Total War Warhammer? Well, in an interesting way, he could possibly have a permanent regeneration, but also give regeneration to anything that's close to him. The battles would last longer, but this could also be used quite strategically. You can wear out your enemy's extra health pools, especially if you know that they have any healers around them. Honestly, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Now, in regards to him coming back from the dead, I think that would be a bit too overpowered if he could do that in the middle of a battle, so I think he could just have the instant respawn timer that Morgor the Shadowgave has. So if he ever gets killed in battle, you can instantly recruit him once again. And lastly, he had a special weapon known as the Windblade, which before a game began, you would have to roll a d6 and consult the chart, which goes as follows. On a 1 or 2, Aekold would be able to physically walk upon the winds of magic, and be given the fly special rule. On a 3 and a 4, the blade itself would become light as a feather, allowing him to always strike first. And on a 5 and a 6, Aekold would be able to throw his weapon as a sort of boomerang, which had the potential to do incredible amounts of damage. This would be quite hard to implement. I don't think he'd be given the fly special rule, as no characters at the moment, unless they're mounted, would be able to fly. I do see the Windblade becoming light as a feather as a sort of bound spell, and maybe even also a ranged weapon bound spell too. Honestly, I'm more disappointed in the fact that we can't have normal characters fly. I mean, it would be really cool, wouldn't it? Next, we have Igrim van Horstman. When Igrim was ordained as the Grand Magister of the Order of Light, he was acclaimed as the youngest and most gifted wizard to rule over a magical order. As he knelt down and swore allegiance to the Emperor, no one guessed that his loyalty had already been given over to a far more dark and sinister master. As an apprentice chanter of the ritual-bound Order of Light wizards, he served under the master chanter Ulrich, who taught him many of the Order's ancient secrets. But all the time he served the Order of Light, Igrim prayed to the gods of chaos for the power to defeat his peers. His progress was rapid. By day he studied light magic, and by night he pored over ancient manuscripts devoted to the lore of the Chaos Gods. Demons of Tzeentch whispered their timeless secrets into his sleeping mind, and Igrim's evil powers waxed strong. For 3 years, the Grand Magister worked his evil in the darkness. Seeds of corruption were planted in the hearts of the acolytes of the Order of Light. Rituals were subtly modified, and their powers redirected. Beneath the college, Igrim laboured at the sealed vaults, one by one defeating their magical locks to uncover the forbidden things that they contained. It is impossible to calculate the damage done or the horrors unleashed upon the world by the Grand Magister before his evil was uncovered by the Inquisitors of Sigmar and the Grand Theogenist Volkmar. The search for and discovery of the source of corruption would make a long and horrific tale in its own right. In the end, the Grand Magister unlocked the dragon Baudros from its timeless prison beneath the Pyramid of Light, and upon this dragon he ascended into the sky and departed towards the Chaos Wastes. On the tabletop, Igrim himself was a powerful Chaos warrior, but it was with magic where he most excelled, being able to get spells from the lore of Tzeentch, the lore of dark magic, or battle magic. The spells on battle magic were basically the 8 laws of magic, it was just the generic name for them. Obviously, to make him even stronger in melee combat, he could ride atop the dragon Baudros. Igrim on the tabletop had the following special rules. First was Power of Mind, which allowed him to take a leadership test with 3d6, picking the 2 lowest results. Essentially, this would be translated into Total War Warhammer exactly the same way as the Empire have their Hold the Line, as on the tabletop this is a carbon copy of Hold the Line. And lastly, he had a special Chaos reward known as the Cunning of Tzeentch, which allowed the Chaos player who had Igrim as his army general to be able to take the first turn. Obviously, there's no real turn system when it comes to battles in Total War Warhammer, so the way I imagine this is allowing Igrim to have a slightly reduced version of Vanguard. So he and his armies would be able to move a bit further than normal deployment, and that would kind of represent the hold first turn movement. Next, we have Village the Curseling, Master of Misrule, also known as the Twisted Twin. Once there was a born pair of twins, one healthy, strong and good to look upon, and one wretched, weak and tiny. Though the tribe's leaders expected the wholesome son to become a great warrior, it was the runt, Village, who was to change their fate forever. As they grew, Formin, the stronger twin, became well-muscled and athletic, quickly learning the ways of the warrior. Village, however, barely managed to scrape by as an apprentice to the tribe's shaman, where he learnt a few meagre cantrips and a little knowledge about the powers that dwelt beyond the veil. Every night the runtling prayed to Tzeentch to reverse their fates, to make him the strong one and his brother the slave. And Tzeentch was indeed listening. The great sorcerer who delights in anarchy eventually agreed to Villitch's selfish request. One night, when the Chaos Moon passed close to the world, Villitch awoke to find that his body and that of his brother had been merged together. His brother's intellect has been added to his own, and there was nothing left of his mind save for a drooling automaton that was enthralled to his command. Villitch's budding magical abilities had been enhanced 100-fold and was possessed of a diabolic strength. Laughing maniacally at his newfound powers, Villitch embarked upon a bloody killing spree, sending crackling arcs of pure change into those who had looked down upon him in the past. By the time the sun set, the village had been consumed by sorcerous fire, and the streets ran with molten flesh. On the tabletop, Villitch was a spellcaster / melee character hybrid, incredibly powerful with magic given the fact that he was a loremaster, so he had access to all the spells of the lore of Tzeentch, but also durable enough that you'd actually want in the front line of your forces. He didn't really have any unique special rules, but he did have a unique special item known as Vessel of Chaos, which goes as follows. When an enemy wizard fails to meet the casting value of a spell, the power dice used for that attempt are converted to bonus dispel dice for Villitch the Curseling, which he can freely use later that phase. Conversely, should the enemy fail to make a dispel attempt to counter one of Villitch's casting spells, the dispel dice used for that attempt are immediately converted to bonus power dice that Villitch may use later that phase. Obviously, we don't really have any dispel mechanics here in Total War Warhammer, so the way this could be implemented is maybe if an enemy does miscast, then maybe some Winds of Magic could automatically be generated for Villitch, as a special unique Winds of Magic pool of course, being that only he could be able to tap into those winds. Lastly, we have Galrock, the Great Drake, first of the Chaos Dragons. In the time of Anarion, when the elves fought their great wars against the tides of chaos, the elder race of dragons fought at their side. These great drakes were the nemesis of the armies of the dark gods, diving from the skies upon the scions of chaos and crushing or incinerating them in their thousands. The might of the dragons could only be matched by the greatest of demons, and the epic clashes between these mighty creatures were events of such magnitude that the mortal warriors could only witness in awe. It was during such a battle that Galrock, the Gold Drake, came upon Faithlessberserker, the Lord of Change. As Galrock descended from the heavens, the avian demon below did nothing more than bare its teeth in a sinister expression of glee. Galrock's great jaws snapped shut around Faithlessberserker's head, ripping it clean away in a multicolored spray of ichor. Within a heartbeat, the body of the greater demon dissolved into a mist and enveloped the dragon and sunk into his flesh. Galrock flew high into the air, and the elf warriors below him raised their cries in triumph. But their cheers died away when the dragon's body became suddenly racked by violent convulsions. The mighty drake froze in mid-air, and an evil light appeared in his eyes. His scales flowed like water, forming into evil. Foul tentacles and wicked spikes emerged from the dragon's flesh, and finally, the once noble head of Galrock split into two, all the way down the base of his neck. Where there was once one head, there were now two. One head belched dark fire, and the other breathed a sorcerous mist that brought horrible mutations and madness. The heads were governed by the same will at first, but soon they started to tear at each other with hatred, a sure sign that the spirit of the great dragon had not been completely destroyed. The mind of the Lord of Change managed to wrest control of the powerful body once again, but not before the elves and the dragons had broken by the back of the demon armies. Galrock then withdrew from the lands of mortals and slept for centuries at a time, emerging now and then throughout history to wreak havoc on the lands of elves, dwarfs and men. On the tabletop, Galrock was an interesting character. He had access to the lore of Tzeentch, making him a quite decent spellcaster, but his baseline stats, while still higher than average for most characters, were still pretty weak for a dragon. All of his stats, barring his leadership, were 6. Decently strong in most cases, but nothing too great. He had 2 special unique rules attached to him, however. One was the Breath of Change, which was a breath weapon. This we've already seen with dragons, so there's no need to explain. And lastly, the Spirit of Galrock, which goes as follows. At the beginning of each of his turns, Galrock must pass a leadership test. If the test is passed, Galrock is controlled as normal. But if the test is failed, the ancient spirit of the original dragon surfaces again. Should this occur, Galrock can't move, cast spells, or use his breath weapon. In the close combat phase, he directs half of his attacks against himself as the two heads rip into each other. If Galrock is already engaged in close combat, he can fight with his remaining attacks as normal. So how could this character be implemented into the Total War Warhammer series? Well, first off, I don't believe he should be leading any armies. He should instead be a legendary hero. It makes the most sense here, cause if he's going to be ripping apart into himself, he shouldn't really be leading an army and then randomly lose your lord. It would be a colossal waste of money for recruitment. However, in regards to that special rule, I'd like to see it where he would randomly go into a pure rampage, attacking anything that's around him. Friend or foe could easily be a target here. The dragon itself would be immensely powerful, but there's a risk to having him in your armies. If the dragon was, say, like a one-man army himself, you'd have to be willing to risk having him in your army, or else he could just easily turn around and start attacking you too. I believe something like that could balance it out, but what do you guys think about all these possible characters, and do you know of any possible mechanics that could come with them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion, shall we? But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various different social media links such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team. Also in the description section below is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Using our special link and also the special code, which is also in the description below, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A special thank you to Ryan Bertsche and Gibraltar LUSC for subscribing to us at our Fame level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule and VSVasan for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you guys enough. The money earned from Patreon is going directly back into the channel, slowly upgrading little bits and bobs, just trying to get to a higher level of content for you guys. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. The support has been insane lately and honestly we can't be more than excited. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.